Hello again, friends. Good morning to you, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive-Thru, right here wherever you have pulled up to on this very, very happy day. I am the great Brian Last. It's my pleasure to be with you once again as we go over your questions which are sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com or on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru. And you may hear some noise behind me. The noise is coming from the man that will be answering your questions, the most controversial man in professional wrestling, Mr. Jim Cornette. Jim, aloha!
Tape. I need more tape.
More tape?
Oh, God. I'm sorry. I was having a nightmare. I was surrounded by envelopes and shipping tape, and the orders were dancing around me with demonic expressions as I descended into the hellfire and brimstone that is the weeds of Cornette's Collectibles. Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the experience here. No, this is the Drive-Thru. What day is this?
This is the Drive-Thru, and your nightmare was reality.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you for killing me. Thank you from the bottom of my little pea-picking heart. You know, last week on the experience, I talked about the pride I had in Cornette's Collectibles and how that I'd written the books and did the photography for the books or appeared in the videos or had a hand in producing them, or, you know, I've got a personal tie to all this merchandise, this classic wrestling memorabilia. And I said that the autographs aren't rubber stamped. Everything is done personally with care, and I sign everything to order. And I have a personal relationship I've developed with the Cult of Cornette members and the customers at JimCornette.com. And I was just thrilled about that. And the first day sales of Behind the Curtain, as I mentioned on the experience when we recorded it, had been off the charts. And holy mackerel, by the second day, went into dumbfounded and then became shell-shocked. Ladies and gentlemen, Behind the Curtain, the 1,500 hardcover copies, the limited edition signed and numbered hardcover copies available at the website, sold out in, what was that, 4 days and 8 hours or something, I figured out. Pretty close to 4 days, folks, and thank you very much for that. But my pride has turned into the chains that I forged in life are now being hung around my neck, Brian. I'm Ebenezer Cornette over here. Because I don't know if you folks have done the math on this, but my little mom and pop organization here, Cornette's Collectibles, I figured you could either weigh it. It's like I sold 2,000 pounds of books in 4 days. Or you can quantify it by saying around 1,500 different people, and they didn't just order the book and nothing else, the T-shirts and the burger tab. We'll get to everything that's sold out in a second. But around 1,500 people bought at least 2,000 different things from me over a 4-day period that all have to be, the vast majority of them, I don't sign the burger towels. That's not a signable item, but the vast majority of which have to be signed by me, many of which numbered. I had thought the Behind the Curtain hardcover would be a great holiday merchandise piece in my holiday business here. We're a little early. It's the fall, but I'm thinking that'll be something for the holidays for the fine Cult of Cornette members. It didn't even make it to Labor Day. So, but anyway, so now I'm in the process, and we are recording this Drive-Thru on a fine, what is today, did you say again, for real?
Today's a Sunday.
Today's on a Sunday morning, and I've gotten about the first 300, let's say 350 books in envelopes, and they're going to be going to the post office in the morning and in the afternoon. We're going to be doing shifts over here. I think Stacy's taking the afternoon, I'm taking the morning, so that I can come back and process more. Some people that ordered burger towels also will, unfortunately, we had to reorder those or custom-made items, so we're shipping the book out now or whenever we can. And then the towels will come later. We're going to do dual shipments on a couple of these things, but we're working on this. We have a plan. We have an assembly line strategy, and it looks like the assembly line at the candy factory in an I Love Lucy episode. I'm stuffing these books down my shirt as fast as I can, and eating some of them. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, so the point is, for the next 7 to 10 days, all I am doing is recording these fine podcasts for you to listen to, trying to sleep a little bit, and filling orders and getting these books signed and shipped out. And we've got a plan. But now here's the important thing, Brian. The important thing, every order, as they came in order, chronologically, was assigned a book number. So those are all going to be shoots. But if you see that someone in the next several days has gotten in the mail number 300 and you're panicked because you thought you'd be number 42, these things look the same once we get them in packages, and we're just filling boxes up with them and ferrying them to the post office. So over the next 5 to 7 days, a lot of this stuff is going to go out. We don't know in what exact order, so fear not. But your book number was reserved.
Realistically, how long do you think it'll take to ship all 1,500 books without the burger towel issue, just the books itself?
They're hearing this program on Monday, August 26th, correct?
Correct.
I would say that I will either have had a stroke and be buried underneath the dogwood tree, or everything ordered will be mailed out 12 days.
Wow.
12 days, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because I figured if however many 100 packages I've done per day over the last 2 days, I'm multiplying, and I think we can do this.
When you originally put the books on sale, like you said, and I know from our off-air conversations, you really intended for this to be a holiday sales item. What did you anticipate? I mean, you obviously thought some books would sell early. How many did you think you would have left going into September, let's say?
Well, I thought that probably they would sell out over the fall period. And truthfully, since the book has been in the works for so long, thinking back, I would have gotten 2,500 if I'd seen how popular everything we've been doing has been becoming over the last several months. But it was pre-planned. So, but I would have got a few more, but nevertheless, that's why they make them collector's items. However, you can still get the book in softcover. Apparently, I was number 1 and number 2 in Amazon wrestling book sales. How can you do that with the same book?
Is one of the versions an ebook?
Well, I don't know.
If that's the case, that would be how you do it. If one is a physical copy and one is an electronic copy.
Well, I know for a fact one's a physical copy. So I don't know about that. Well, why wouldn't you want to have a beautiful book like this? Why wouldn't you want to have a physical copy?
Why not have both?
Why not have both? Maybe that's why they're both number 1. Anyway, I've heard from some people that they are finding them in fine bookstores, as we mentioned. However, apparently their orders have been too small also, because I'm having people say, I just bought the last copy. So order online. But it's on Amazon, obviously. We've already said this. But everything, the soft covers, the hard covers, obviously what did you call it? The e-book. Yeah. Bad taste in my mouth, e-book. If it's not on paper, it's not a book. But anyway,
I agree.
They're all selling out. So jump on this. And I will cheer from the sidelines now.
Based on this overwhelming success, have you guys had any talks yet about a second book?
Well, based on the fact that the overnight success just happened overnight, it's a weekend. I mean, there was talk that if this was a success, that there would be future volumes. However, not in the last 4 days. It was, oh shit, we got to hurry. No, this thing's selling like crazy. So,
well, here's a more important question. Do you think the success of this book is going to hurt the Jim Cornette brand? Because with everyone labeling you as being irrelevant, and you're making for this year more than most independent workers will make in their life, I could say, I know. What do you think? Is this going to hurt your brand, you being not so irrelevant?
Shit. I didn't think about that. Oh, fuck. This could kill my gimmick. You know what? I tell you what, I was going to mention that if anybody's mad at me, because it's going to take me like 12 to 14 days or so to process all of this situation and get these fine products out to you fine folks, then I've already stooged myself off because they know a guy, they know an attorney, they know a lawyer. But now I've realized that I'm going to have to retain the attorney and sue IDW Publishing for putting out this incredible quality book.
What?
And sue Brandon Easton and Dennis Medry, the artist and the writer and the artist, for contributing to this, what I know is going to be an award-winning publication, this best-selling item, because it's going to kill Jim Cornette's credibility.
It may kill Jim Cornette.
Because I am supposed to, well, I haven't had any sleep in 36 hours. I am supposed to be irrelevant and over the hill, and I'm not supposed to be this popular. And they have just done a horrible job on my public image. They've made me the huge success that I am. So I'm going to sue. And you know what happens, Brian, when you need to sue? Call Stephen P. New.
There's only one person to call, and that's Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084.
Or newlawoffice.com.
That's right.
But in all honesty, and we every week we talk about the greatness that is Stephen P. New and his legal skills, his acumen as a barrister. How about that? But we just heard last week that especially, and some of the cases have come from the Cult of Cornette audience, but he's helping the military now as well because of these noise-canceling headphones that turned out didn't cancel the noise and caused hearing loss in some of the servicemen.
Massive hearing loss, yeah.
Well, Stephen's doing something about it, by God.
He's kicking ass. That's what he's doing about it. He's making sure he takes care of the Cult of Cornette every single day, and he's been doing it like an expert would.
Like an expert? What do you mean, like he's impersonating an expert?
I mean, he is an expert in defending the Cult of Cornette. He's the consigliere.
Yo, don't backtrack. Don't try to swerve these people around and weasel out of it. You just said as Stephen P. New acts like an expert, which would indicate that he's not really an expert. You have destroyed our relationship with one of the finest attorneys on this planet, a man who is a champion of the little guy, a man who gets these huge judgments for people that have been downtrodden, and you have trodden all over his reputation there. I expect you to apologize. Sir, I demand satisfaction.
I'd like to apologize to the court and to the officer of the court for claiming he's an expert.
Now, wait, Your Honor, these two crooks here is innocent. Thank you, Lawyer Calhoun. Anyway, if you don't want to be represented by Algonquin J. Calhoun, but instead you want to be represented by a man that will fight for your rights and win your case, Stephen P. New, thenewlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. And the countless number now of Cult of Cornette members that he has counseled or referred, or including myself and my family. So Stephen P. New is a guy you can trust with your predicament. Whatever Dick got you in that predicament, and whatever he meant by that predicament, Stephen P. New can get you out of that predicament. Stephen P. New.
888-692-8084 or visit newlawoffice.com.
So I mentioned they should buy Behind the Curtain online, right? Because it's the hottest selling comic book since Fantastic Four #1.
You did, but I think there have been a few hot selling comic books since then, but yes.
More than Fantastic Four #1?
Giant size X-Men #1?
I'm fucking with you. All right, let's do it.
Do you like the X-Men? You've talked about Fantastic Four and your Silver Age comics. Are you an X-Men fan?
You know, I liked the original X-Men. I got a kick out of Professor X because, once again, in that first box of Silver Age Marvels, I think X-Men #1 was not in there, but X-Men #2 was. And then I saw them get their costumes and etc. And I loved Cyclops with the fucking heat beam and the Beast, of course. The Beast was like the X-Men's version of the Thing. You always got to have the fucking cleanup guy, the Hacksaw Duggan of the group. So yes, I was an X-Men fan.
Were you a fan of the movies?
Well, you know what? I don't go to movies. I don't like to sit in the dark with people behind me.
They're on TV. There's this thing called television where they air the movies a few months after they are shown in the theaters, so you have the opportunity to watch it without anyone behind you.
Are they on Turner Classic Movies?
The X-Men have not made it to Turner Classic Movies yet. No.
We'll see when they do.
Yeah, they're going to be on the new Disney streaming service, Disney Plus.
Down by the old Disney stream.
Well, before this stream gets any more downtrodden, let's get some questions here, Jim.
Apparently, there's some prostate issues with this particular stream, so let's go to the questions.
This first one was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi. Several people sent in this question. Let's read this version of it. What do you think of WWE's move to run NXT opposite of AEW? Do you think it helps or hurts putting developmental guys on a 2-hour live TV show?
Well, first of all, at this point, are the guys that are going to be on their TV show still developmental guys?
They're developmental guys there, but they sign up every indie guy they can, and those are usually the guys you see on TV.
Well, yes, in OVW, when we did Ohio Valley Wrestling Television, that was a developmental territory television. It was obviously local TV. It was low budget, but I think we actually, if people knew how little we actually spent, they'd be amazed we got it on the air, and it did great ratings, and we had sponsors. But nevertheless, but a lot of those guys were on television for the first time. A lot of those guys were actually working in front of people for the first time. So that was a developmental television. It just had the best booking in the business at the time. But NXT now, no, as you said, they've signed up, whether it be the best independent guys, maybe some of them haven't had a lot of experience on television, but they've all done video now because any schlub can do video. It's, 20 years ago, you needed television cameras. Now everybody's got a phone. So the level of experience is different. And they're not going to be taking the guys that they've just put in wrestling school from scratch and putting them on this program, I would think, from day one, without them earning somewhat similar to, but on a larger scale, what I did in OVW, where the guys that came in the amateur class, that's all they did. Then they progressed to the flea market shows and live events in front of some people at the church gym, but they still couldn't be on TV. And then when they got a little better, then they were on TV but doing jobs. And then if they got better than that, they got pushes with gimmicks. You're not going to see the first 2 phases of that of the NXT guys on the NXT Wednesday night show on fucking USA, correct?
Yeah, USA.
Yeah, okay.
Originally, the rumor was it was going to be on Fox Sports 1, but instead they're on USA, which is obviously a much, much stronger channel and direct competition with TNT.
And so this is basically, it's going to be the counter programming that the WWF can do to a young, hip promotion. Their version of NXT is high on in-ring, and we've talked about they've had great matches on NXT before. Nobody pays attention because I put them over, but that's going to be their counter programming to the fucking combination of work rate wrestling, as they call it these days, and the cosplay wrestlers that apparently the college kids like because they're all goofy. I don't fucking know that they're going to give them on TNT.
2 questions for you, Jim. One, is it at all a surprise that Vince McMahon would do this, run opposition directly against them? And 2, what do you think it says that it's not a main roster show that they're programming against AEW, that it is NXT?
Well, they're smart enough to know that if they programmed Raw against AEW, they would actually be creating another Monday Night War. Because not only would they be saying that we consider AEW equivalent to our main brand, but also the people that watch Raw would continue to watch Raw because that's what they like. And the people that are going to watch All Elite would watch that because they specifically don't like Raw. Even though when you think about it, if Vince did as many stupid fucking goofy things as these outlaw cosplay fucking bastards at All Elite have done over their careers with the Invisible Men and the fucking all the other shit, they'd crucify Vince for the same thing. Anyway, but also that's why I'm saying it's not the product. Raw is completely different than what they're going to be doing on TNT. We know that much. So they would each have their own audience. But if they put NXT opposite All Elite, for the reasons I just mentioned, it's more likely to be similar fan base or similar. They feel like that's the counter programming. So it works because it's their secondary show, but also it's more effective against what they're going to be doing on TNT.
So let me ask it to you this way, because we've done so much talking about AEW. Everyone hears the criticism. They don't hear any of the things you say about how they can improve themselves. If you were an executive with AEW right now, how do you combat this? Knowing that before your first show debuts, you are going to have competition with a 2-week lead-in advantage in NXT. How do you combat that, knowing that the WWE is going to be programming against you?
Well, I would have already signed a bunch of different fucking wrestlers and given them probably a different assessment of the product that we were going to be doing. So I don't know if they'd have made the same fucking decision. But right now, they got to do the same thing they did. They've got to make some stars, and they've got to concentrate on shit that will get over to a wider audience. And their matches not only have to be better, but have to be more emotional. Because that's one thing that NXT still... You know, who's the guy with no facial expression and everybody? Johnny Gargano.
Yeah.
If the NXT style is known for the Johnny Garganos that have the great matches with no facial expression and there's no emotion, you know, they both of those shows need somebody to break out by snatching everybody by the fucking balls, and not in a hardcore wrestling way, but in a Stone Cold Steve Austin personality way. Somebody needs to go out and get over on one of those two programs.
When you were an executive with WWF during the Monday Night Wars, that period where you were still before you left and went back to Louisville and left the booking committee, did you guys talk about it? Because I don't remember what the numbers were. Did a lot of the audience switch back and forth during Raw Live between Raw and Nitro? Did you guys have any conversations about that?
Oh God! What? Yeah, that's what they were always. I had as few as possible because it made me fucking ill to my stomach. Because that was Russo's whole thing. Also, they're going to be switching back and forth, and then at first they did, and then when WCW started trailing down, they did less and less. The opposite of Mr. Brownstone. A little got more and more. A little got less and less. They stopped switching back and forth, and we're just watching Raw. But, that's the TV folks were always worried about that. But it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I always thought the better shows over a longer period of time will win this thing. But at the same time, the TV people, the network people were always freaking out over numbers like that too. So that's probably why the wrestling people started freaking out over numbers like that.
Bring up Mr. Brownstone. Is Jim Cornette a Guns N' Roses fan?
No, I just thought that line was cute.
Okay. So you don't like Guns N' Roses?
Well, now, when did you stop beating your wife, Mr. Cornette? I didn't say I didn't like Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses would not be in my pantheon of all-time great rock and roll performers, but neither would I expectorate on them like a drunk bum laying in the gutter.
Our next question was sent in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Dylan Clark. A little bit of a follow-up on our previous question, Jim. Do you think WWE putting their developmental territory on national TV is a good move? In a hypothetical scenario, what would have happened if WWE put OVW on national TV?
Well, we would have made a lot more money. No, once again, from what I said earlier, they're not really putting their developmental program on television. They're putting another brand of wrestling that's different from what they do on Raw and SmackDown that theoretically appeals to a younger audience because it's younger guys. That's what we were doing with OVW. We had, for a local audience, we had younger guys, the new faces, exciting athletes, but it was still a traditional wrestling presentation. And that's it was Gilligan's Island there for a while. It was the only one. And that's why it used to be the best booked wrestling program, because that was also the only one that just one person was in charge of. But they're not going to put their developmental program. They're going to put the top guys that they've signed from around the world that appeal to that demographic and that product that they want to present in NXT. And they're going to feed in the most accomplished trainees from their program underneath those. And you might see a few halfway greenhorn faces, but it's not going to be like they're broadcasting their wrestling school. There's going to be different programs and different levels of development, I'm sure. And what was the second part of the...
If OVW had been put on national television.
Well, no, it would have looked like shit because people wouldn't have gotten it because it wasn't supposed to be a national television show. I mean, if OVW with the same athletes doing the same things, same music, same announcing, same presentation, but shot with a big budget by a professional crew had been on television, it actually would have got over. But not as it existed because that was not what it was supposed to be. And in actuality, some of the appeal would have been gone because we couldn't do the, Louisville-centric angles and booking we did that resulted actually in some of our biggest houses.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jesse D. in St. Louis. And his question is about the WCW episode from December 24th, 1988. Dear Jim, what the hell did I just watch? During a 6-man tag team match with the Junkyard Dog, Rick Steiner, and Ivan Koloff, you were forced to carry a dog throughout the whole match. This is at the time when the Midnights were fan favorites, so you were being very fan-friendly. It was very unsettling, to say the least. What can you tell us about this episode? Love the podcast. Thanks for all the great content.
Good Lord. You know what? I remember faintly. That was TBS had just taken over. Paulie and I were most upset because they had stopped flying the managers to the live events. The houses were falling in a hole. The shows made little, if any, sense at that. It was a rough transition. And they were screwing up the midnight angle. So we were especially not pleased. JYD was a babyface. Ivan had switched babyface because bless him, at the transition, I think they were transitioning Ivan out. He wouldn't be there much longer. I think it was an age issue with him, and it wasn't Crockett anymore. God damn it! I'm trying to remember why I have a fucking dog. But I remember now carrying a dog out there. Yes. And
Steiner.
It was
did Steiner have his dog yet that he would come to the ring with? Arnold?
No, I didn't carry goddamn Steiner's fucking dog. A dog was as big as I was. Arnold, are you fucking kidding?
So you don't know where this dog came from?
And no, I think it was just it might have been just a dog backstage, and JYD, and I don't fucking know. I'm having fun carrying the fucking dog. I'm assing off. I was a baby face now. I can't remember what the fuck. But in one of these awful, countless WCW TV tapings they were doing in that period, for some reason, to go out to ringside with these people, I carried a fucking small dog. And it wasn't Arnold Steiner, no. That was Scotty's dog, and Arnold would eat your ass, boy.
You hadn't seen the Junkyard Dog since he left Mid-South in August of 1984. What was it like when he showed up in 1988, the first time you had seen him in 4 years?
Well, it was the same guy, and Dog was always fun and funny and, cool to talk to, but obviously the physique had changed and the work rate had changed. It was not the first. Yes, it was the first time. Yes, it was. Yeah, it was not. All of a sudden, it was like, big, fluffy, gregarious dog instead of I'm going to bite your ass off dog. Every dog needs a bone to chew on, Mid-South dog. It was not a great transition.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from The Wise Man. As an NWA fan growing up in the...
Wait a minute, I thought there was 3 of those.
No, it's The, T-H-A, Wise Man. I know his real name.
Okay.
According to this email, I know his real name too, and it's certainly not The Wise Man. As an NWA fan growing up in the 1980s, I would always go to the Civic Center to see the best in the business go head-to-head. The NWA would never go back to Huntington, and the WWE never came to Charleston. I realize now, because of the way the territories were laid out, there's no follow-up to that sentence. I guess there was supposed to be something else. I realize now, because of the way the territories are laid out, I guess that's why they never came back.
Yeah, well, in Crockett's days, he ran both the Charleston Civic Center on a regular basis and a Huntington Civic Center on a spot show basis. Because they're only 50 miles apart, right? And it's kind of the same metropolitan area. So when the WCW and WWF wars broke out, then basically WWF got the Huntington Civic Center by promising them they would go there more often, such as, every time they were in the market, whereas the NWA or WCW ended up with Charleston because that had been the building that Crockett ran more often anyway. That's how that happened. But, once again, Crockett would run both of them. And it was amazing. You would go up there to Charleston at least once a month and do a decent house, sometimes great house, and then go to Huntington, only 50 miles down the road, a few weeks later and do another good house. It was really a wrestling hotbed at that time, but that's why the two companies ended up splitting up like that.
With AEW's announcement to make Charleston the fifth stop and a live event, is it safe to say that Charleston was the first step in taking back the territory? As far as I know, Charleston has never sold out for a wrestling event for any promotion.
What?
If it indeed sells out, I don't see the WWE coming back as long as AEW provides a solid product. This, to me, is the kind of differences and thinking that could give AEW the edge in the long haul, and I'm patiently awaiting your thoughts.
I lost some of that around the far turn, but I don't know why they picked Charleston otherwise than I believe somebody said they're trying to be around colleges as much as possible, because a lot of college kids, if you watch Ridiculousness or whatever, a lot of college kids apparently like this fucking wacky goofiness. And there's probably validity to that. But no, Charleston was a great wrestling town going back years and years, and it has somewhat of a wrestling tradition. I don't know if taking Charleston or conquering the Battle of Charleston is taking the territories back. I'm not sure I'd go that far. But Charleston has in the past drawn big for wrestling. The Great American Bash, and I can't even reach my midnight book right now. I'm tied down, but I want to say the Great American Bash 86 was a sellout. It did $113,000, as I recall, at the Civic Center. There's been a number of big back in the 70s. Flair and Blackjack Mulligan, as I remember, probably would have filled the place up. I know it sold out for at least a couple of those Monday Night Wars WCW tapings. So but at the same time, there's not a great population there. I don't mean great. There's not a large population in Charleston, West Virginia. I think the metropolitan area is like 250,000. So we shall see. I was not surprised by any of the other towns that they announced. All Elite announced to do TV in, the Bostons, Philadelphia's, et cetera, but Charleston was we'll see what happens. That's the town I was trying to get Ring of Honor to establish. By the way, when I remember I told a story about when the fucking office boy wanted to charge $60 for front row tickets in Charleston. He said, well, I said, for a brand new wrestling promotion, why don't we, let them get in and get a taste of it, right? We had all these radio stations and local promotional opportunities and 2 television stations under the umbrella. And he got pissed. He said, well, Ringling Brothers charges more. I said, it's a fucking circus. What do you want us to do? Book a dancing bear, right? But Charleston, I've been waiting for somebody to reestablish Charleston. We'll see what happens.
How do you think it will do? Do you have any thoughts going into it? How Charleston will be for AEW?
Well, I wouldn't, if I was them and they didn't sell out, I wouldn't get my feelings hurt about it, because if they can get half a house at the Charleston Civic Center, they should consider themselves lucky.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Buzz Anderson in Portland, Oregon. In 1987, Turner Home Entertainment released one of my all-time favorite video cassettes called The Danger Zone. Hosted by Magnum TA and Missy Hyatt, it features highlights of various NWA stars set to some pretty awful music, with brief promos from various wrestlers interspersed amongst the clips. As you appear in both the highlights and the promos, which, while brief, were classic Jim Cornette, I was wondering if you had any memories of participating in the production of this video cassette. Also, if you know why a clip of Nikita Koloff describing hitting someone with a Russian sickle as, quote, better than coming was allowed to make it into the final product.
Oh, my God. Well, I was about to say, believe it or not, there is a copy of that VHS tape of above me and to the left down my shelves here in the office, along with the other TBS and Turner Home Entertainment VHS tapes that they released. And I have not watched that. I don't even know if I watched it when they put it out, but I know I haven't watched it since they did it. And that's 1987, right? So it's 32 years. And I don't have any recollection of what the fuck is on it. I remember the commercial for it because it played on the TBS programs.
Yeah.
I don't have any memory of what I did or what they featured on it or why Nikita was allowed to say that it was better than coming. But at least he said it in his Russian accent, didn't he?
One of the things I remember about the commercial was I never quite understood what Dusty Rhodes was saying. It sounds like he's saying in a promo they show in a clip of, I'm going to rip your neck off and dance on your tonsils. But I'm like, that can't be what he's saying.
I bet you it was. That sounds like something Dusty would say.
He's going to dance on his tonsils.
I'm going to rip your neck off and dance on your tonsils, baby. Hey, that may be a new shirt. I'm going to rip your neck off and dance on your tonsils, baby.
There we go. We need some more merchandise for Christmas season. In Cornette. You know, one of the things that was silly to me about that video cassette was it came with a calendar, a 1988 NWA calendar, which featured all of the wrestlers of the NWA, or several of them, in like Speedos.
Yes.
And then Missy Hyatt, the only one you'd actually want in the calendar. There's one page of her, and then Jimmy Garvin and Steve Williams and a bunch of guys posing. I don't know who the audience for that calendar was.
And Stan Lane.
Was Stan in the calendar?
Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Stan Lane was in there. I have one. Missy was on the cover, and she was in a bikini, and that's probably what sold what copies it ever sold. But yes, you are correct. For whatever reason, and it might have been Great American Bash time when they did this or whatever, but the Turner Home Entertainment people wanted to do a fucking calendar featuring the wrestlers as a swimsuit calendar. And guess who I don't remember who's in it. Well, like you said, Dr. Death's in there, a variety, not all, but a variety of some of the middle card and main event talent, right? Guess who else was asked to be in it that is not in it and no showed and didn't go?
I don't know.
They didn't just ask Stan Lane to be in a swimsuit. Fuck, they asked the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette, hey, you guys want to be in a fucking swimsuit calendar?
Oh, come on.
I swear to fucking God. But they said no. They said, well, you know, Cornette, you could like have the fucking white shit on your nose and the flowery Hawaiian shirt or whatever. But no, Bobby didn't want to do it because he didn't want to wear fucking swimwear. I don't think he ever got in a fucking swimming pool. If he did, he wore either his fucking shorts or his tights, whatever. I was not going to dress up in the clown outfit for this fucking. This was still Crockett still owned the company. We were still trying to be halfway fucking serious, right, about this shit. And just do a goofy fucking swimsuit picture when we were supposed to be heels. And Stan, what the fuck? Because they said we're going to get paid. Well, they said we're going to get paid about all this other stuff too. We never got any fucking royalties for Starcade 86 for the video. We never got any other royalties for any other videos. We never got, basically they didn't make any Midnight Express merchandise, but we never made any royalty money. So why are we going to make off this fucking swimsuit calendar? So we no-showed the photo shoot, me and Bobby, and they just shot Stan. He got a check for $1,000 from a fucking no good swimsuit calendar.
Do you have any idea how many units Starrcade 86 on video moved?
I know that we were told that it was the first wrestling video that went gold, which was gold. A gold VHS tape in those days was 50,000 copies. And then it surpassed that.
And I mean, on the cover, they show the scaffold. You realize you're one of the big selling points, if not the major selling point.
Well, yeah, no, the goddamn commercial. That's why I had the most famous bump in the history of wrestling until fucking Cactus got thrown off the cell, because they showed that bump on the commercial 4 times on every Saturday night TBS show for a fucking year. And I remember, because we were told we were supposed to get royalties, right? So, but we were also told, oh, shit like that, VH, it'll take 6 months. So starting in summer of 87, about once a month, every Wednesday, after we finished interviews and I'd picked up my check, I'd go and I'd lean in Jimmy Crockett's office, and he always had the door open, but I'd knock on the door frame. And I'd say, Jimmy, have you heard anything about the royalties on that Starrcade tape? Nothing yet. And this went on from the summer of 87 until, I would say, January of 88, when I determined that we wasn't going to get any fucking royalties. And that's when we started renegotiating our contract, because of the fact that he had been sold the bill of goods, that all this huge international or national advertising money will come in, and the Sunday night main event show is being expanded and all this stuff. So we renegotiated before he knew he was in financial difficulty, and had our contract signed. And that's when he found out, oh, shit. But he knew he wasn't going to have to pay it anyway. And TBS ended up paying that large salary for me in the midnight.
Jim, when and where have you seen Jim Crockett Jr. exhibit the most amount of personality and charisma?
I know there was a time.
How different is Jim Crockett Jr. and Jackie Crockett?
Oh, my God. How different is fucking Stone Cold Steve Austin and Mother Teresa? No, Jimmy, I don't mean to malign Jimmy Crockett, but he was a very reserved, some would say dull, not overly animated or personable type of guy. Except, I guess, when he got drunk on the plane in Vegas, and I wasn't there, so I don't know things about that. But
did you do something? Did something happen?
Well, now listen to you all being all fucking gossipy.
Well, when it comes to a story about Jim Crockett Jr. exhibiting some sort of personality, I want to hear it.
Well, no, I'm just saying they used to be consuming a lot of adult beverages out on that private plane out in Las Vegas. So maybe something happened. I wasn't there. I don't know. I was in my hotel room with a pizza, saving my money.
All right, or maybe Jim Crockett behaved himself, remembering the Wrigley rule. So who knows, when you're on a small plane, what you end up doing. But Jim, let's get on.
Who knows? That's the next T-shirt. Who knows when you're on a small plane what you may end up doing? Or even a large plane, for that matter. Flair was on it. Flair's been on some large planes and done some things.
Isn't it some story him and Piper were flying somewhere and they got the stewardesses, one to wear his robe and one to wear Piper's kilt and like walk up and down the aisle in the plane?
Yes. But there was nothing on underneath the robe, and we believe the kilt. But that's a story for another time.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Nick Fox. Hello, Brian and Jim. I'm a wrestling fan from England, which...
Now, wait a minute. Why do you come first?
That's what Nick Fox wrote.
Well, fuck Fox.
Hello, Jim and Brian. I am a wrestling fan from England, which may not sound strange nowadays, but back in 1985, American wrestling was never shown on UK TV. I luckily got a hold of a couple Apter VHS tapes, and the rest is history. Now, I have always been fascinated with Adrian Street, and I know you've managed him once, but could you please tell me some matches of his I should look up? Also, I remember him being in an adult magazine with some ladies. So any good stories about him? Thank you so much. You legends. Keep it old school. And I guess this is in the news because Adrian Street, there is a documentary WWE will be airing very soon on the network about Adrian Street.
Well, yeah, and you got to give me a link to that because I've got to see that. But do you remember Adrian being in an adult magazine with different ladies?
Yes, it was in England. I saw it. It's like, I think it was him in the back seat with one of those big bosom British models.
Okay. So but it wasn't like Adrian's bishop was standing at attention or anything.
No, it wasn't like Chris Adams. Yeah, it wasn't like Chris Adams in Playgirl.
And also he was in, was it We?
Yes, it was We.
I have that magazine somewhere in my collection. He and Jeannie were in the grotto. But anyway.
I was about to say, it wasn't just him in that magazine.
Yeah, nevertheless. No, Adrian is he's a classic wrestling personality in that he's unique. There's nobody else like him. He and Lynn, and that's why I was going to say I'm sure it was all business with Adrian in the back seat with the big bosomed model because he and Linda are very happy, and have been together for 45 or 50 years or whatever the fuck. But
Plus no, I kicked his ass and the woman's ass.
Yes, and Linda's the toughest one of the bunch of them. I had a ball managing Adrian because it was, my gosh, can you imagine this culture shock? I just get in the wrestling business, and I've been in it 2 months as a manager, and I'm like 21 years old, and have grown up on Memphis wrestling, and here comes Adrian Street, a legend of World of Sport, British wrestling, of an icon, who influenced so many people and the whole glam rock thing and blah, blah, blah. And he's in his early 40s at the time. And he's just come from Los Angeles, but really just had left Britain a year before or whatever, and is experiencing Southern style territory wrestling for the first time. And we're riding around in the car with each other, and I'm managing him. It was fucking classic. And Linda also was so much fun because, like you said, she was tougher than the guys. And the thing that made it all work was Bill Dundee was the booker, because Dundee had been in Tennessee so long he understood Southern Territory wrestling and how to get over in Tennessee and how to book Tennessee. But he had spent so much time in Australia working underneath when he first started that he understood. He'd worked with a lot of British wrestlers, and he understood how to work with Adrian and how to get the most out of Adrian's gimmick. And, no other booker probably in the United States at that point would have gotten Adrian as well as Dundee did. And that's why that they ended up working a program for like 16 weeks in a row. And I was great because I'm figured in now. I'm working with the booker, right? So Adrian Street versus Bill Dundee went 4 fucking months. And any of their matches, Bill nobody worked like Dundee either. He had a unique style, but he could work with guys like Billy Robinson, or he could work with guys like Adrian, not only for the gimmick, but for the mat wrestling and the English influence. So Adrian's matches with a lot of guys in Tennessee during that run were charitably not that great because they didn't fucking get him. And this was really his first major run in the States. So he was still learning to adapt. But with Dundee, they were fucking great and got heat. That was the first couple of times I got swung at and fucking drilled by, hot fans, was managing Adrian against Dundee.
And then he would show up in Mid-South when Bill Dundee was the booker in '84 and you were there.
Yes, and once again, Bill knew how to get fucking tremendous heat on Adrian. And by that point, Adrian had been in the Carolinas and had worked with some more Americans and had gotten a little bit more used to things and could meet them in the middle, on a more consistent basis. So even though I didn't get to manage him in Mid-South, my God, I think people may have killed both of us if they'd have put us both together. We still rode together quite a bit. And after interviews on Wednesdays, me and him and Linda would always go get a fucking deep dish pizza at the Pizza King in Shreveport and wait on the TV taping to start. So it was fun, but just the stories he had and just the shit he had done and the holes that he could show guys in the locker room and just his fucking the British expressions that he used to describe Tennessee shit was just fucking hilarious.
How long were you around him the first time before he said something negative about Big Daddy?
Probably the first time he ever got in a car with me. He wouldn't just walk up in the locker room and say, by the way, that Big Daddy was a right twat. But probably the first time we spent any time in the car, because the first thing I was going to say is, hey, tell me some stories about British wrestling. And that would be the first, the fucking Crabtree. So it wasn't too long.
He came into Mid-South when Dundee finally got Watts to allow him to start wrestling. He had been booking for the first several months without ever making an appearance on camera, no matches, except for filling in for, I guess, Troy Graham, the Dream Machine, when he got hurt. And then Adrian Street comes in. I think he got the TV title from Terry Taylor. There was a great angle where he's wrestling Taylor and he kisses him. And Taylor doesn't know how to react. And then he gets rolled up. And then the next week, I think it's Chris Adams versus Adrian Street. Taylor comes to ringside to kiss Miss Linda. And then Adrian gets out of the ring and starts beating up Linda. I mean, it's so ridiculous. But to Adrian Street in Mid-South, how did he get over there? I mean, did Watts understand? It's such a different gimmick for Bill Watts. Did Bill Watts understand it and get it?
Well, first of all, and a lot of that stuff was just a revamp of what he had done in Memphis. Because his debut in Memphis, I've told his story before, but they didn't think anything of it. They booked him against one of the job guys that was doing Memphis TV at the time, Ira Reese. And that's something that Adrian had done, the leap up in your opponent's arms and kiss them, and they'd be so stunned, what the fuck? And then the roll up, that was something that was part of Adrian's gimmick. So whenever he had 5 or 6 minutes with with Ira and, showed that he could wrestle and did some of his twirling and his flips, I shouldn't say flips, his somersaults and his prancing, the gimmick stuff, as well as some of his holds and everything, he leaps up in Ira Reese's arms and kisses him. And Ira Reese is so stunned that boom, and then he gets rolled up. 1, 2, 3. And thus was the first live interracial kiss, a homosexual kiss on Memphis television. A male white man had never kissed a male black man on Memphis television before, and the station heard about it on the switchboard. And so that's they didn't do it again, but that's the time they had done it. But it was interesting. Anyway, and then that stuff that Dundee had done, where Dundee do the kiss on Miss Linda to get back, blah, blah, blah. But to answer your question, yes, Watts got it, because Watts understood. Not only was Adrian established with this gimmick that he had done in England and done now in various parts of the country, and it had good reviews from the Mid-Atlantic, but also Adrian was a shooter. And Watts had respect for that he could tie up half the guys in his fucking locker room, including some of the football players. So there was never any issue with that. And Watts understood it was fucking heat, and that Dundee knew how to book Adrian because he had done it before. And Dundee had been wanting to wrestle since he got there. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, because he was the booker, he wanted to make himself the main event. No, he wasn't. He didn't. He wanted to wrestle because Dundee just loved to fucking wrestle. And Dundee could never be happy unless he was wrestling every night as well as booking, right? He loved to wrestle. So in Memphis, he was a main event guy because he was a main event guy. And he had the history before he ever got in a booking position of being in that spot. And that's why they continued it. But with Mid-South, he got Watts to agree, hey, I'll let you wrestle. And you can do a program with Adrian Street. It's in the middle. It's not the booker. And he's trying to get Adrian over. So it's not the booker trying to put himself over or whatever. It's just that Dundee loved to fucking wrestle. And he'd probably have taken the same money to do both jobs if he could just be doing both at the same time. But it wasn't an issue in Mid-South as far as Dundee trying to put himself in the main event.
To a lot of wrestlers, not everyone was you. You had an idea of what was happening throughout the world. I got to think to a lot of wrestlers, they didn't know Adrian Street. They weren't aware of Adrian Street when he got here. He'd only been in America for a short period of time. So based on him having an effeminate gimmick and being a smaller guy, did you ever see anyone make the mistake of actually trying him, not realizing who he was and what he could do?
No, because I guess it's funny at first. Nobody in Tennessee, nobody's going to try him anyway. They were used to gimmicks, right? In Mid-South, I think there was probably a few eyebrows raised, but when you first encountered Adrian, especially for some of those, bigger, tougher guys, it'd be like, well, I wouldn't want to be, ruin my reputation picking on this little fucking, short little fucking guy. And then once you find out who Adrian is, then you didn't want to try to pick on that short little fucking guy. So, no, I don't remember him having trouble with anybody while I was around, at least.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Grady Elliott, a man who always uses his left and right turn indicators, according to this email. This is about something you've brought up several times recently. On episode 4 of Smoky Mountain Wrestling, at the 25-minute mark, Hollywood Bob Holly does an interview about how he was driving down the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles, and Jack Nicholson waved him down at a traffic light to ask Hollywood why he was in the wrestling business instead of being a big-time movie star. Hollywood Bob responded that while he could easily be a big-shot movie star, he likes beating people up for a living. My favorite part is when Bob pauses during his story to tell the fans, yeah, Jack calls me Hollywood because he knows who I am. Previously on the Drive-Thru, you told the story about how Paul Heyman waved you over in the WCW locker room to tell you about how Jack Nicholson approached him at the China Club in New York City to ask him about his angle on TV. I'm not sure of the timing, but my question was this. Was Hollywood Bob Holly's promo inspired by this story? And did Jim help him come up with that interview? Or was Jack Nicholson just the go-to star at that time for a Hollywood type of reference? Any memorable stories about Bob Holly from the Smoky Mountain days? He was my favorite wrestler in the WWF growing up because he reminded me so much of my dad.
Oh, yes, that was directly related to, as in, yes, I told Bob every single word to say. And here was the thing. Hollywood Bob Holly, and plus I had just been actually out in Los Angeles. Sandy Scott and I had been out talking to Rick Rubin, about what we were doing and some of the first TV tapings and etc. And that's when he had taken us to this club off the Sunset Strip there, right? So we're standing around and we're doing the promos, and I want to give Bob a little promo. I'm trying to push him. So he was never really involved in an angle per se, because he just started and did some matches to get over and had some promos. And he didn't have live promos. He had pre-taped promos usually, because Bob had never done television before. Anyway, he'd done jobs on WCW TV. And he had done some independent work. He was friends with Percy Pringle. Percy really was high on Bob. That's how he got the job in as Sparky Plug eventually the next year in the WWF. But that's Bob was his full-time job at this point was as a welder, and he lived down in Mobile, and so he was making a significant trip to come up and and do the Smoky Mountain TV and house shows, and he was riding up because Robert Gibson was in Northern Alabama at that point. So he's riding up with Robert. But anyway, the thing is, I wanted to use Bob Holly because I'd seen him do those jobs on Atlanta TV, and he reminded me, he was one of those guys from Alabama that kind of moved around at that time like Bobby Eaton. He did a lot of stuff off the top, whether it was knee drop or the elbow or splash or whatever. He was a smaller, thinner guy then than he would become. And his work was very good. He could take bumps, he could sell, he could work as a babyface, he could work as a heel. He was vicious as a heel, on offense. And he's one of those guys you could just tell he got it because he moved around the ring right. He just had that body language. So he's a great worker and has no idea how to talk and has no personality established for himself because he's always been Bob Holly from fucking Mobile. So beautiful Bobby Eaton is who he reminded me of. So beautiful Bobby Eaton, Hollywood Bob Holly. This is what you did in the old days. You just give a guy something to start out with because it's better than what he's got, which is nothing. And if something clicks, then it's great. If not, he goes to another territory and he finds something else till he gets it right. And since Bob had no discernible gimmick so far, okay, Hollywood Bob Holly. He's a fucking redneck from Alabama, you can tell by his voice. But he is, and it kind of like the Buddy Landell principle, which got over in Knoxville, a fucking redneck country boy bragging about how fucking big time he is. Because everybody knows one of those in that part of the country. He's Hollywood Bob Holly, and he knows all the fucking stars. Well, we know he ain't talking to Jack Nicholson, but if Bob Holly saying he talked to Jack Nicholson got as much heat with the wrestling fans as Paul Lee saying he talked to Jack Nicholson got with me, then there's some, and he didn't have any, ring jackets or anything. He had a fucking windbreaker. So I had this woman in Knoxville for $200 make him a pink and black robe with the feathers. So he could be, beautiful Bob Eaton, Hollywood Bob Holly, brags about being in Hollywood and hanging out with all the stars. He gets in the ring, he can actually do some shit. And then we'll see where it goes. And it didn't go very far because at the time, Bob's, I don't know his domestic situation, but I know whoever his significant other was at that point thought that he ought to either concentrate on wrestling or welding, and welding was making more money. But so he had to quit the Hollywood Bob Holly gig. But then the next year, Percy was able to talk him into getting a shot, and they liked him in the WWF, and it was there for however many years after.
Were you surprised when you showed up to a TV taping one day and there's Thurman's Sparky Plug?
Well, I wasn't surprised, but I was disappointed because that fucking goofy I figured here's another T.L. Hopper or whatever, Freddie Joe Floyd, take a great fucking talent, put a stupid goofy gimmick on him. He was just happy to be there. But then later on, he was able to get over with his work and just to, being Bob, to where that he was able to strong arm himself out of being Sparky Plug and become Bob Holly. So that I was happy about. I was always happy to see him there. I didn't like the gimmick at first.
So this is 1992. He works for you as Hollywood Bob Holly, early 92. And obviously the Heyman incident, I'm guessing, would have happened either late 88 or early 89. This is a few years after the fact where Heyman mentions running into Jack Nicholson. This story was still fresh on your mind?
Well, I'm just thinking of what's some fucking bullshit that this heel can say to brag about being connected in Hollywood to all the fucking hillbillies. And of course, and it just came up in my head. Fucking Jack Nicholson loves you, whatever.
Our next question, Jim, was sent into
Bob. I will say Bob was not an accomplished public speaker at that point, and he delivered some of these with all the fucking vim and vigor of a fucking hostage video. And say, here's the thing. It wasn't him. We later on would see what Bob Holly was, but then he was a long-haired kid from Alabama that, was a good worker and, and welded. But later on, as he grew up, a puppy with big paws, he turned into more of himself on television. But that was something to start with, basically.
Our next question, Jim, was sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Jason Anderson. A while back, I heard Jim talk about Salina de la Renta on the Drive-Thru or the Experience, and after watching Fusion and a few other things I found on YouTube, I agree with Jim completely that she is fucking amazing. She is the prime reason I will continue to watch that company. The bit where Conan comes out when Jim was interviewing her in the ring and they go at each other is awesome. Now, to my question, do you think that she would ever catch the eye of the WWE? And if so, do you think they would allow her to be her, or do you think they would ruin her like they have with others?
Yes, to everything. She's either 22 or 23 years old now. So obviously, I would be astonished, especially in this wrestling atmosphere now, if the WWE was not aware of who she is and what she's doing. Having said that, yes, they would ruin her, because they would, if she suddenly, and I don't have a crystal ball and people can wave ridiculous money figures around in front of people's faces. But if I was a betting person, I would say that she is well aware that she shouldn't go there now either, even if she contractually could, or anytime in the near future. She's with MLW, but more important than that, she is establishing who she is and getting rave reviews from everybody and getting experience and working with a variety of veteran talent from Mexico and the United States, and being featured in a position where a lot of that stuff is totally her being Salina de la Renta on the spot instead of being constructed or choreographed or, written out for her like a WWF, production machine type of thing. And a lot of that is great for trial and error. Some things work, some things don't. You pick things up by doing it on the spur of the moment when you think of something and you do it and it gets a good, I won't say a response, the kind of which you want. You do more of that. That's a lot of that is improv. She's getting all these opportunities. And I think that she will be figured in 10 years as an on-camera performer of some description with whatever the biggest wrestling company in the world is at that point. And if she wants to continue, she'd probably be figured in both in front of and behind the camera for a time after that. So she's in no hurry and no rush to make don't get jumpy. Don't make no sudden moves. If I was her, I'd capitalize on everything good that's going on for her right now and the opportunities she has and establish herself as herself to where that no one would want to change her. And then after she has somewhat more of a track record and is even more, because if she's this good now, then how good is she going to be in 2 years? Basically get so good that people would be insane to try to change you. And also get so good and know your worth to where that you can make deals on the principle that you're not going to be changed.
If you were a betting man, Jim, if you had to put some money down and make a bet, who do you think has a brighter future? Salina de la Renta or MJF?
Oh, see, now they're going to call me a misogynist. They're going to call me a massage therapist. They're going to call me a menage a trois. I think MJF has more opportunity because he can also be an in-ring wrestler at a main event level. And that eventually gets you into potential WrestleMania money and et cetera, as an in-ring performer. But at the same time, I mean, they're both so good. And I think MJF will have a behind-the-scenes position in the wrestling business if he doesn't do a Rock and just get so good he goes straight into movies and then can't afford to be in wrestling. In 10 or 20 years, he's going to be running something in the biggest wrestling company in the world, whatever that may be. But I mean, I think Salina can do anything. She has trained to wrestle in the past. And one thing I told her is I said, forget it. Forget everything you ever learned about training to wrestle and don't ever do it again, because you should only ever wrestle on a pay-per-view or a huge television spectacular that is a blow-off of a long-running program where another female finally gets their hands on you. Otherwise, stay out of the fucking ring. So the only reason that MJF would go farther is just because he could potentially do the in-ring at a major level as well.
I have another question here sent in to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com for the misogynist Jim Cornette. This from Kevin Richards. Everyone knows how double tough guys like Harley Race and Haku are, but who in your mind is the toughest women's wrestler? My money is on Mae Young.
Well, I mean, of all time, I don't know if Mae now could beat the younger girls. Well, it depending on what era. Ronda Rousey, obviously, it would be a female equivalent to Brock Lesnar in the locker room as far as somebody at a high level. Until Ronda Rousey and her four horsewomen, what other MMA girls have gotten into wrestling? Not a lot.
No.
So that's.
But in terms of toughness, what about someone like Sherry Martel?
Well, yeah, but I was going with that first, in that in modern era, a lot of the tougher guys in wrestling came from the MMA world. Only a few of the girls have. That's interesting. But yes, Mae Young would have probably been the toughest girl in the business for most of the years she was in the business. But then, Sherry Martell was, she was tough, but she wasn't a shooter. Then you get into who are the female equivalents of the Hacksaw Duggans. There's just a big ham-fisted tough bastard, but couldn't really wrestle versus the, toughness of the fucking Jack Briscoes or Danny Hodges or whatever that were high-level elite, college and amateur wrestlers. I don't know who in that in between Mae Young and I'm trying to think of who the fucking tough girls were. I don't know if we ever even asked, hey, which one of you guys could kick the other guy's ass for real? I don't know if that ever was a subject that came up in the male part of the locker room.
Yeah, did Moolah have an enforcer?
And Moolah's enforcer was her fucking the blue pieces of paper with her signature on it that she gave out every week.
Did you see? I just recently sent this to Cosper. I hadn't seen it before.
Penny Banner was one of the tougher girls in a variety of ways, and she was a multi-sport athlete for real. And of course, I'm sure today, Charlotte was an athlete. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
I just sent to Cosper recently. I had never seen this, and neither had he. Had you seen this footage that recently emerged of Elvira Snodgrass?
I did not see the recently emerged Snodgrass footage.
It's her.
Is it anything like the Zapruder film?
Kind of. It's her and I guess her husband, who was her second. And it's the first time I had ever seen her. I'd read so much about her. And, she was notoriously a tough woman, I guess. I mean, she survived that car accident and everything. But it's the first time I've ever actually seen footage of her.
Well, gosh, and we didn't even say anything about Mildred Burke. Obviously, was a badass, the first badass girl. Well, maybe even what was that? The Cora Livingston was even before Mildred Burke, and she wrestled guys. But Mildred Burke was a legitimate badass. I have not seen the Snodgrass footage of which you speak, but she was, from what I've read, a wiry young lass, as they used to say. Of course, we debunked the rumor that Mildred Burke and Elvira Snodgrass drew 18,000 fans in Louisville, Kentucky in 1941 that was perpetuated by the book Whatever Happened to Gorgeous George, one of the inaccuracies found within that volume. But she still was a double tough young lady, spunky, as Jim Ross and I once described Terry Runnels. She's a very spunky girl, full of spunk. And Terry did not know that there was two meanings to that turn of a phrase, and confronted both of us in the hallway about it at one point, until we mentioned that there was a different meaning other than which she had potentially had in her mind that had caused her to be full of spunk. She said, "What the hell are you doing saying I'm full of spunk?" And you're gutsy and you're feisty and you're spunky. And was that what that means? Yeah. So she was completely in the other direction on the meaning of that.
You could have gone the other way and really fucked her and said, "Hey, I'm just repeating what I heard on Techwood Drive."
Hey, come on now.
All right.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
We have time for at least one more question.
Come on. What are you doing?
All right. One more question at least here. Let's see how this one goes.
Yeah, all right.
Has to go better than the last one.
Has to go better than the last one.
Jim, this question was sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from David Cuesta. As we all know, youth is a vital key of any wrestling promotion. My question is, from your experience, do you think AEW's 4 vice presidents have a good business sense to accept when it's time for them to step aside and let the newer, fresher act shine when their act starts to get old and stale? Or do you think we're going to have a repeat from the WCW days when wrestlers like Hogan, Hall, Nash, and Savage, etc., refuse to step aside for the younger wrestlers to make their mark?
First, I'm offended by your usage of the word act. I despise that when people say it's an act, or they have this act, or they do their act, or it's a hot act, or whatever. That's terminology that was never used in wrestling until modern times. No, I don't think they're going to have that problem, because to have that problem, they would have to get over on a mainstream basis and stay over for a year or so. And that probably there's a better chance of me fulfilling all the behind the curtain orders in the next 6 hours than there is of them lasting a year at the top and having to have a choice of whether they should move over or not. I think they should have moved over last week. Cody's a different story. Cody knows what he's doing, but the other three knuckleheads, unfortunately, apparently are going to continue doing the same shit they've done for this, what do they call it? The ironic college audience instead of actual wrestling fans. And I don't think that people who, basically get into cosplay wrestling are going to be as loyal or as dedicated as real wrestling fans were, or last nearly as long before they find the next fucking hula hoop.
All right, well, let's follow up on that with our last question.
Yeah.
This one was sent in the Corny.
In all honesty, I don't think they're going to have any problem being Nash and Hall and all these guys. Well, they don't know when to move over for the young guys. Yeah, they should have moved over before they fucking got in the way to begin with.
Well, this question is somewhat related. This was sent in the CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Henry Lansky. I don't watch AEW.
Now, is he Meyer Lansky's cousin?
I was wondering. I mean, timing-wise, we did just talk about Meyer Lansky here on the show.
You think they're keeping an eye on us, the Lansky family?
As long as it's not the Luciano family, I think we'll be okay. I don't watch AEW. Cody Rhodes is a pencil neck. But after the experience this week and Jim talking about how stupid it is for letting all these guys hire their friends, there's nothing after the but there. Everyone's having a tough time today with commas and periods. While I personally don't give a flying fuck about the future of AEW, is there maybe a benefit to hiring your friends and people you know you have chemistry with, as opposed to taking a gamble on someone you don't know?
Well, yes, obviously there's an advantage to hiring people. As we mentioned, a lot of bookers would always bring in their crew. Didn't have to be their best friends, but with their crew that they knew how to book, that they had had success with in the past, that they had either worked against or with as partners or used as bookers to a level of success. And that's the way the business was founded. And they would travel to the different territories and do the same or similar angles, as we mentioned earlier, with Mid-South, which was a revamp of what they'd done in Memphis because it hadn't been seen. But first, you have to be able to identify talent. In the successful cases, the bookers book guys that are part of their crew because they know how to get them over, and they know how to get over, and they draw money with their thing, and they happen to be friends because of that, not the other way around. Because I'm sorry, but there's no other way to explain why there is a level of either unsigned or underserved wrestlers today that are signed to places that would probably allow them to be bought out for the money that All Elite Wrestling is being able to throw around. There's legitimate talent instead of a guy that sticks his hands in his pockets and a guy the size of a fucking fourth grader and a guy and on and on and on. That just smacks of, hey, either we really think this clown show is going to appeal to a large amount of people enough to sustain us, or while this guy that we're sucking dry don't realize what's going on, we're going to get all our friends a job and show them. It doesn't make sense. So yeah, nothing wrong with hiring your friends as long as they're good. If you have major motion picture stars as your friends and you want to shoot a major motion picture, then that's when that comes in handy. But if you want to shoot a major motion picture and your friends are the fucking bag boys at Kroger, I don't think it's a fucking positive thing to hire your friends in that instance.
All right, since you're a betting man and you like to gamble, let me ask you another question. If you had to right now place a wager on which of the four executives, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Cody Rhodes, that Tony Khan will get fed up with first, who do you think it'll be?
Wouldn't you think it would have to be Kenny Olivier?
I don't know. The Bucks could get annoying.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, I can see Olivier dying on a hill for his art before I can the Bucks, who obviously just want to make as much money as possible and don't give a fuck what they do and then get out. Because, Olivier seems like he takes this now. The guy who wrestled grade school children and blow-up dolls in public now takes his art seriously, whereas it looks like the Bucks will just, they're going to show up and do the super kick like Nick Cage when he got into money issues and would just shoot any movie he was offered. They're just going to show up and super kick the fucking production assistant in the back hallway whenever anybody wants them to.
Jim, who had the best super kick of all time other than Chris Adams?
Oh, God. I don't know. I do not know because I don't know that I've seen them all.
Were you a fan of Shawn Michaels' super kick?
Well, I mean, he got it over better than anybody else, but it wasn't the best looking one. But it was smooth and it was safe and it looked good enough because he's a fabulous, fucking worker. But I don't know that it was the most devastating looking one. Jimmy Del Rey's was actually very underrated.
Yeah, he had a good one. I saw that a few times in Tennessee.
But I don't know if I'm learned enough in all the super kicks right now. To quantify something as the best of all time, I'd need to go back and compare tapes.
One last thing before we wrap the show up, because you've brought this up several times, and I want to get your thoughts on this. The idea of buy these guys out of their contracts. Are you speaking about a WWE contract? Do you think Vince McMahon would ever go for?
No. I'm talking about anybody else. If I really wanted to have a fucking tag team division and I was a billionaire, the first thing I'd do is call Ring of Honor and say, how much do you want for the Briscoes? And solved. And then I would watch somebody try to buy the Young Bucks physically fighting Mark and Jay Briscoe. But if you want to draw money on a mainstream basis and have a tag team division, I'm not saying that Vince would let the Revival go. No, he doesn't need the money. But any other wrestling promotion in the world, when compared with a billionaire, I'm sure would be anxious not anxious necessarily, but willing to deal. And you'd save yourself money in the long run. Because they're right now they're signing all of the fucking dregs of humanity of the Dramedy Wrestling Federation, and all those guys are going to shit the bed, and then they're going to need talent anyway. Yeah, I'm sorry, but the guy with his hands in his pockets is not going to spark a giant fucking surge of all elite wrestling ticket sales. It's just muddying the water and getting in the fucking way. They needed to concentrate on some money-drawing fucking talent right off the bat, and instead, the unknown shit show has been paraded out in front of people.
Well, with that, the drive-thru has closed.
with that, the unknown shit show is closed, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, we'll be back next week with another brand new drive-thru, unless Jim has a heart attack this week, inscribing all these books and shipping them out because it is going to be such a process. But of course, you could also hear us this Thursday on the Jim Cornette Experience. It's a big one, a deep dive look at the 1986 Great American Bash Tour. You're going to want to check this out this Thursday on the Experience.
I cannot believe we haven't done it yet. We didn't realize until it was called to our attention that we had not done it. So we are rectifying this.
We are rectifying it, and you can hear that this week on the Experience. And of course, you could hear past experiences and drive-thrus, clips from both shows, as well as the Omnibus collections on the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel, tinyurl.com/official Corny YouTube, or just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. It'll come up right away. And thank you. We keep gaining more and more subscribers. We really appreciate the support for all of the videos on the official YouTube page, as well as the classic content on the Arcadian Vanguard video channel. You can follow Jim on Twitter at the Jim Cornette. You can follow me on Twitter at Great Brian Last. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com, or available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcasts. And of course, Cornette's Collectibles at jimcornette.com.
Please don't plug it.
It's closed.
Don't plug it. Please.
It's closed until further notice.
Yeah, just please just give me
save your money, folks.
Just give me a chance. Wait, I've got a wonderful new product coming in October now. It was going to be September, but it's going to be October now. So just give me a chance next week or two.
We'll find out more about that in the future on one of the many, many shows. Find out about the next time Jim Cornette blows up the internet. But until Thursday on The Experience, for Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally ho!